Hey, this is David Goodwin with Iron Rhino Forge. I want to say thank you for everybody who knows me, my body of students and my friends. I'm here with Shauna Weckerly, the tax goddess, and we're going to talk today about something a little bit different than what we usually talk about. Shauna, I'll let Shauna introduce herself, but she is the tax goddess, and she'll tell you why right now.
Tell you why I'm a tax goddess. Hi, everyone. My name is Shauna, the tax goddess. Tax goddess specializes in tax strategy for business owners. So, Avi or David, from our conversation, I think today we were going to talk about the blacksmith community and some of the concerns. You said there was a bunch of questions that you had gotten from some of your viewers, some of your listeners, of things that they wanted to know from a business perspective related to taxation and how to do that. So I'm looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah, so it's kind of a common theme with a lot of people that I work with, a lot of people that I know, where a lot of people, it's not what they're going to go out and do professionally. They want to improve in their craft. They want to be really great blacksmiths, but they don't necessarily want to make it their primary income. But what they do want to do is a lot of people want to at least, yeah, cover their own expenses, right? Make it a self-funding hobby. Um, Especially in today's economy, everybody wants, if you're going to have a hobby, make it fund itself. The other thing that people want to do is some people want to actually make it a secondary income, not their primary income, but just something to have a little spending money on the side. But both of those things just brought to mind something that we should be talking to you about what are the right tax strategies for this if we're going to make it at least fund itself. What kind of tax strategies come to mind? What can we do to really make that happen?
Absolutely. Well, and you hit on some very famous IRS words there. You hit on hobby and funding and some big IRS trigger words. So let me start with the idea of a hobby, right?
Mhm.
So because there's a very specific definition for the word hobby in the IRS's code books. Okay. So when you're talking, and this is all about taxes, right? Obviously, people hobbies in real life, you have lots of things that you do. A hobby, according to the IRS, is something that you do for fun and not for profit, right? So with a hobby, you are absolutely allowed to write off hobby expenses as long as you have income. So, for example, if you're first starting up and you're an anvil, apparently my dogs are just as worked up about doing blacksmithing as everybody else is here. If you're starting up and you're going to go buy some hammers and you're going to buy an anvil and you've got to buy some metal, right, to actually do stuff with, all of those things are, of course, going to be expenses. But in the eyes of the IRS, if it's a hobby, and we're going to get to the difference between a hobby and a business here, if it's a hobby, with a hobby, you can only write off those expenses up to the amount of income you have. So if you've spent $1,000 getting equipment or tools or whatever it is, you have to make $1,000 to be able to write off the expenses against the income you earned. So really, there is no way for a hobby in the eyes of the IRS to be deducted against other income that you might have, like, as you mentioned, a primary W-2 job or, some other gig that you're working that is your primary source of revenue.
So if
So
I make a bunch of things in my workshop, bottle openers, S hooks, fire tools, things like that, and I take them to a festival or a crafts fair and sell those, that's the only income I can use to that's the only income I can use to deduct my help me out here.
Yep, to deduct your expenses against that income. Now, you gave me a
Okay.
very specific situation, right? Which is I went to a craft fair to
Mm.
go sell my S hooks and my fire pokers. Okay. That is the line where the IRS starts looking at this saying, is this a business? Okay.
Okay.
Because it's a hobby. You would have had your space, you would have made your S hooks, but you would not necessarily, maybe you sold them to some friends, they bought a fire poker set or something like that, but you're not intentionally trying to go out and make money. If you're
So
spending money to
yeah.
go to a fair or a festival or to buy a table at a craft, the big white tents with the crafts, something like that, the IRS
Mhm.
starts to look at that as that is starting to become the line of actually focusing now on more on having a business, which you can
So
deduct.
so from if it goes towards being a business, then I can deduct the expenses that I spent out of pocket from
Correct.
W-2 wages or other sources.
Exactly.
If it's strictly just a hobby as the IRS defines it, then the only money I can deduct is whatever I generated. That's something. Okay,
Exactly.
got it. So
Exactly.
how does this relate to a lot of people might not go out to a festival or somewhere outside, but they might use Etsy or an online source to offer to sell social media. Does that still
Yep.
count as a business?
Yeah. So the definition of the business, and this is where it starts to become a little more subjective, right? So where is that line between this is a hobby and I'm just trying to make back what I've earned
Hmm.
versus this is an actual business in the eyes of the IRS? So if you go on Etsy and you log in once a quarter, right? You're just kind of like, I want to buy a new tool, so I'm going to sell some of the stuff so that I have enough money to buy the new tool.
Hmm.
That looks a lot more like a hobby than somebody who's on Etsy every day, grabbing their Etsy link and putting it on Craigslist to see if they can find a buyer for it, right? So
Got
there's a difference in the level of activity as well when you're looking at a hobby, which is something you do on the side. You're really not trying to make money or to spread your name or anything like that, versus something that you're a little more focused on, even
It's
if it's your second. You were
yeah.
talking about if I have my main W-2 job and then this is like a second source of income, it's okay. It's more about the intent of the motive, right? Are you intending to make a profit? Then you can
Yeah.
start looking at it as a business.
So it sounds like a lot of this is a little bit fuzzy, but it comes down to what can I justify if
Mhm.
somebody asks me. How would I build a case? How would I show them that this is something?
Yes.
Yeah, it's either something I'm doing just as a hobby and I don't really care if I make any money for it versus something that I actually have an earnest attempt to at least make not a lot of money, but maybe a little bit of extra money, but I am trying to make money from it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And you nailed the nail on the head, Mr. Blacksmith.
I made the
Yeah,
nail.
you made the nail and then made the hammer and nailed
Yeah.
the nail with it. I love it. So yeah, really, really, it comes down to the IRS to intent, right? What did you intend? What language are you using when you speak with other people about this? Oh, this is my hobby, or this is my side gig, right? This is how
Yeah.
I'm trying to make that money to buy that motorcycle, right? Like I'm intentionally trying to make a profit. So you do want to be very cautious if, now, well, there's a lot of questions just went through my head here, but you want to be very cautious about the way in which you speak, you write, when you put it in emails, when you do videos, right? You want to make sure, what are you calling it? Are you calling it, this is my hobby? Because the IRS will take that into consideration. Yeah, this is my hobby. I do it on the side. I'm not doing it for profit. Or are you saying, this is my business. I'm trying to grow it. I'm trying to create something. And this is, whether you make money or lose money is different. Okay.
Okay.
Because whether you make money or lose money as a business, the IRS really doesn't care. For the first 2 years, you can lose money as a business, and that's fine. As a hobby, if you lose money, you do not get to write off the losses. So it's
Okay.
actually very important, right? So let's say
So
you're, go ahead.
So
Yeah,
it sounds like this plays into a lot of the reason why, and I know you've said this to me before. I've heard you say this a lot before that any person, especially if they're earning a wage as a W-2 worker, everybody should have some kind of business that they own. It
absolutely.
sounds like that's where this ties in.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, okay, so let's say, you're making 50,000, 70,000 something at your W-2 job, right? And if you call this a hobby and you treat it like a hobby, right? And you
Mhm.
spend $1,000 on equipment, but you only make $200, right? As a hobby, that $800 was personal money that you chose to spend on something that was fun. That's a hobby.
Discretionary funds that you
Discretionary
spend.
spending. Exactly. Versus if this is a business for you, right? Well, the IRS has actual statistics from the Small Business Administration that the first 2 years, most businesses do not make a profit. So if this is a business with a business motive, the intention is at some point to make a profit with this thing, right?
Hmm.
The first 2 years, you could spend $1,000 on equipment, only make 200, but now that negative $800 will offset your $50,000 W-2. So you're going to pay less taxes on your W-2 because you have a small business.
So just by me, when I'm at my anvil and I'm working on my craft, I'm doing it to develop my own craft for because it's something that I enjoy. But if I also hold, if I'm holding the intention, if I'm thinking about how can I actually make some money out of this, how can I use this to have a little extra money to buy shoes for my kids, to take my wife out for an extra dinner once a month, every once in a while. When I talk to people about it, when I post on social media about it, because I'm always going to tell my friends what I'm doing. But if I show this as something that's a business and I'm really trying to also earn a little bit of money through this, if I'm trying to be good enough to where this will earn me an income,
So
I
let's
can
talk
use
about
that.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
let's talk about that because you've kind of given me a spectrum there, right? At first, you
Yeah.
were talking about I'm thinking about how can I make this a business. Thinking and
Okay.
action are definitely two different things. The IRS
Okay.
wants to see you take action. Did you go learn a skill? You thought about it, you learned a skill, so you posted an ad in Craigslist and said,
Mhm.
hey, I can teach you, even if it's a baby skill, I can teach you this skill. Okay. You took an action to try to get some money for something that you learned, right? Versus
Okay.
thinking about it. So
Yeah.
action is definitely very important.
Okay.
Okay.
So when I'm talking about this on social media, I want to talk about this in a way that reflects an opportunity to create value for somebody.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, because hope is not a strategy, right? Something that
Opium.
somebody will open, something that somebody will pay you for, right? So one of the questions you had asked early on today was, okay, well, if I've made some S hooks, but I'm not thrilled with them, they're
Mhm.
okay, right? They're not something that I would feel comfortable putting on a table and trying to sell to somebody. Listen, they may not be perfect in your eyes because
Mhm.
most makers are perfectionists, right? That tip of that S hook is just not perfect. I'm not going to
Stop,
do
you're
this.
hurting me.
I'm hurting you. Sorry. Stab in the heart. I get it. Most makers are perfectionists. However, there are people out there that will look at that and say, well, listen, I'm not going to pay $30 for that hook because that would be a professional hook, right? But I will pay $7 for that hook. It's still a really cool hook and I still really like it. Okay, well, if it was a choice between not selling it at all and it goes into a scrap pile or selling it for $7, if you try to sell it for $7, whether you
Mhm.
did or didn't is kind of a different matter. But whether you tried to sell it for $7 and nobody bought it, okay, you still were trying to sell it. You were taking an action to try to sell it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you can actually sell things, that's even better because then you have
Even
proof,
better.
right? Even better, right? The IRS does like proof that you are in fact making money, right? They do like
So
that.
how do I present this on my taxes? What does this give me if I
Mhm.
spend maybe $500 on buying a starter anvil and a starter forge and a couple of hammers? And I've spent
Okay.
maybe $400 or $500 just getting set up.
Okay.
How do I present this on this taxes? What does it do for me in my bottom line?
Mhm.
What does it look like from a tax
Absolutely.
perspective in my
Absolutely.
pocket?
So one of the very first people that I want you to talk to when you're just starting to think about this, like I'm going to take it from a hobby and I'm actually going to try to make it a business. Okay. One of the
Mhm.
very first people you need to speak with is your tax CPA or your tax preparer. Okay. Because they will be able to give you some advice. We're going to give you a ton here today, right? But they're going to be able to help walk you through what forms do you file, like actually file on the tax return. What do you need to be legal? What kind of documents, receipts? When you bought that $400 anvil,
Mhm.
do you have a receipt for it? Right? Where did you buy it from? These kinds of things. So they're going to walk you through some of the basics. But assuming that your CPA is on board, right? So you're good. You're trying to make a profit. The CPA is on board, or whoever's preparing your return. Okay. What does this look like on your return? So if you spend, and is it okay if I say $1,000 just to make my numbers easy?
Sure. Just
Okay.
for simplifying math, yeah.
Just for simplifying, thank you. So you spent $1,000 getting everything set up, right? If the amount that you're going to see on your tax return is dependent on which tax bracket that you're in. Okay. So if you're making $50,000 and you're single, you might be in the 10 or 15% tax bracket. So if you spend $1,000 and you're in the 15% tax bracket, it's going to reduce your taxes by 15% of 1,000. So it's
Okay.
basically $150 back on your tax return. Okay. So in your mind, you can effectively count that everything you buy through the business gets a 15% discount on it.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously, as your bracket changes, that number is going to change, right? And what you're looking for is, yes, you spent 1,000, but you earned 200, so your net is 800.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Great questions. These are fantastic. So,
Well,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, what else is a good question to ask? I don't know what would be a good
Yeah.
question to ask.
Well, one of the other things, it goes to the IRS, right? So we've talked about, how do you make sure that you're protecting yourself, and what do you need? What information should you have? So definitely receipts, right? I know a lot of this business is done in cash, okay? But if you're going to do it as a business, make sure that you get a receipt when you buy a tool, when you buy that ample, okay? When you buy the metal. If you take a class from a blacksmith, right? If you take a course, ask for a receipt, right? So that you can prove I'm trying to improve my education so that I can sell things not at $7, but at $35, right? So you do want to track what it is that you're actually spending. So tracking the stuff. The IRS would be asking that if you got audited. And if is kind of a big key here. So one of the really cool things about having a small business, and in this case, we might be talking a micro business, right? Making 200 and spending 1,000. But if you have a business on the side here, the IRS has given us, as tax preparers, they have given us the audit rates if you have a business. So if you're a W-2 employee only, right? So you work for somebody else, you get a W-2 at the end of the year, your automatic audit rate is about 3%. Just completely random pull. They just pull you for whatever reason. It's completely random. Okay. When you add a business, that number goes up to about 4%. So you are adding about a 1% chance that you're going to get audited. But the real question here is, it's 1% against 99%, right? So should you have all the records? Absolutely, right? You want to be able to track what did you earn? What did you spend? Dates, if you can get receipts, do that, right? If not, just keep a simple ledger, just a little book, and write everything in the book. And this is what I spent. But definitely make sure that you have your receipts, have your information. In case you get audited, you have all the detailed backup of exactly what you did and why you did it. So
that makes sense. It goes back to what we talked about earlier, as a lot of this comes down to what can you justify if you're asked.
Exactly.
Right. Nobody always knows everything, and nobody has everything perfect. But were you trying to be deceitful, or were you honestly trying to make an effort, and maybe you just made a mistake, but you can explain it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is simple. Everybody, not everybody, many business owners, when they first start, right, or side gig or hobbyist or whatever you want to call it, go for business owner. But many business owners, when they first start, are, to be honest with you, petrified of the IRS. I'm going to do something wrong, and they're going to get me, and they're not throwing you in jail over $1,000. It's not going to happen. So first things first, you heard it here live, right? They're not going to throw you in jail. But you're right. If you were you intentionally trying to deceive the IRS gets a little mad about that if they find it. Okay. So, there are so many ways to show intention of having a business, right? Free ways. You don't have to go spend money on advertising to post your $7 hook on Etsy, right? Of course, Etsy, if you sell something, Etsy's going to charge a fee, right? They might have listing fees, so there's cost to that. Craigslist is free. You can still post to Craigslist, right? If you post
there are a lot of marketplaces out there where you can post without a fee.
You can post for free, right? So you do absolutely, if you're going to go the business route, you absolutely want to show that intention. I posted twice a week, every week for 52 weeks, and I only made $200. Yeah, but you were showing intention. You were trying to make.
So it helps me justify taking a deduction for all the money that I spent.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, because just because you didn't make money doesn't mean the IRS is going to say no. That's the hard part about intention. You have to prove intention. You don't have to prove that you made a profit, not for the first 2 years, right?
And this is what helps me take a tax deduction up against my W-2 wages versus just against what I made from selling the hooks.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what else do people need to know about why it's a good idea to use this as a business, or what else do people need to know about how to get the most out of their tax deductions from having this business? What else would they need to know?
You know, one of the things that comes to mind almost immediately. So let's take, for example, you're a blacksmith, right? You're sitting, I presume, can I ask, is that your home where you are right now? Or is that's home? Okay. So
the kitchen.
Cool thing, the kitchen.
I'm sorry, it's my home office.
Thank you.
I roped off a square footage, and this is
you know
my
me
family's
too well.
not.
You know me too well. So,
my wife knows that the what used to be the dining table is no longer for family use.
It's no longer family use. I love it. Well, so let's talk about that in all seriousness, right? Home office and use of personal items for the business. Okay. So you might have a personal cell phone that people are calling you on to buy your hook. Okay. Well, that means you're using your personal cell phone for your business. You might drive in your car to go buy that anvil, right? You might drive 100 miles to go find this guy that's got this great deal on this anvil, like way out in the middle of nowhere. Well, that driving, all that mileage is a business deduction because you drove your car, personal car, to go do this business thing. Okay. There's lots of examples like that where somebody is using personal items for the business. All of those should be tracked, should absolutely be tracked. Okay. MileIQ is a great app for tracking mileage. If side note, if your spouse helps you in the business, maybe that box of donuts could be a business expense. It might be a little bit above, might be a little bit aggressive, but really what you're trying to think about here is what kinds of things are you doing special that you would never have done if you didn't have the business? You wouldn't go drive to get that.
Is that box of donuts something that I would have bought anyway, or am I really trying to express gratitude for helping my business, for supporting my business? My friends helped me
show up. Exactly.
My friends helped me move my shop, and I bought them lunch. Right?
That would be a
business expense.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. 100%.
And even if I haven't made enough money to cover that business expense and it comes out of my W-2 wages, it'll still count against my W-2 wages that I made somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay.
As long as it's a business and not a hobby.
As long as I've made this into a business and not a hobby.
Yep.
Okay.
Now let's talk about that home office. Okay. So home office is a very misunderstood thing. Okay. So technically, per the IRS, to have a home office, the space has to be used, whatever space it is, has to be used only for home office. Only. Okay. So a lot of people, for example, might have a guest bedroom and they have a desk up against the wall in the guest bedroom. The IRS is okay with that. You get to take the square footage of the desk, of where your chair, however much space for your chair, and maybe if you have a filing cabinet or something, okay? You get to
turn the whole spare bedroom into
not the whole spare bedroom, because somebody else could. It's the purpose. I mean, it's even called the spare bedroom, right? I mean, somebody could go sleep there, and that could be the spare bedroom. So you bring up an excellent example, your kitchen, right?
Well, but what if the spare bedroom doesn't? What if I have a spare bedroom and I take the bed out of it, and I take all other functions out of it?
If it's 100% for business, that room, you're good.
Let's say nobody, technically I have a spare bedroom, but it's been years since anybody's actually been in that guest. I haven't had guests for years, right? Okay. So why don't I take everything out of that? And now it's not 50 square feet just around the desk and the cabinet and everything,
or whatever.
Yeah. So now it's all of a sudden a 200 square foot office instead of just a corner of the spare bedroom. Okay.
Yep.
So that helps me take a larger percent of my mortgage as a business expense.
Because when we get home office, right? So whatever your home office square footage is, right? And let me finish just really quickly. Let me finish about the kitchen, okay?
Okay.
If you're currently sitting at your kitchen table, you eat dinner there. You eat breakfast there. The IRS does not allow that. I'm being very honest with you. Don't even try. Yep. Yeah.
So what
So
you're saying
go
is
find
get my office, my home office out of the kitchen and put it in a dedicated room.
dedicated room, dedicated corner of a room. Not everybody has a spare room, right? So it's okay to be in a corner of a room or in a part of a garage or
Even if I
something
take
like
a
that,
corner of the living room, right? If I just take the corner of the living room
as
and that's
long
where I
as
sit,
nobody else uses that space for any other purpose.
they can use the rest of the living room, but not that corner.
Not that corner. Exactly.
Or okay, yeah, I like the idea of a corner of the garage, or
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
whatever is
Okay.
dedicated space for
Has to
offices.
be dedicated space. That's the key to the home
Okay.
office. Now, going where you were kind of leading us, which I love. I have trained you well, Mr. David Goodman. The benefits of knowing you for so long. When we're talking about a home office, one of the main benefits of a home office deduction is, so let's say it's 100 square feet out of a 2,000 square foot house. Okay, so that's 5% of the house. Okay,
Mhm.
any penny, any penny that touches that house, 5% of it now becomes a business deduction.
So you mean it's not
So
just my mortgage or my rent, it's also utilities, air
any
conditioning.
penny, any
Wow.
penny, utilities, if you have to replace the air conditioning unit, if there was a flood and you had to buy a big fan to remediate, get the water out of there, any penny that touches the house in any way, you're going to get 5% of it as a deduction against your business.
5% back on my electric bill in August in Phoenix. That's nice to hear.
That's like $500,000. Yes, 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 absolutely. So, yeah, if you have a home office, it's a great additional deduction that a lot of business owners, when they're first starting, it's you want to expand your brain.
Yeah,
Anything that you own personally, like your house, right? You own your house personally that you're using on behalf of the business because there's a home office there is going to be a business deduction.
got it.
So,
Now you said what I own personally. What about if I'm renting?
a very fair, great question. You can do it on rentals as well.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. And we're coming up on it's almost 30 minutes, 27 minutes here.
Sorry.
Just to
Yeah.
quickly summarize some of the highlights, we talked about using your craft as a business instead of a hobby. It's easier than you might think, and it's more important than you might think. Documenting your expenses and being able to use the expenses of your craft, any expense that relates to your craft, as a tax deduction against your W 2 wages if you have it as a business instead of just a hobby, right? Make
You
the
got it.
business not an afterthought.
Exactly. And I
Okay,
love your phrasing. I love your phrasing because if it's an afterthought, the IRS is going to know it if they ever
got it.
come look. So, love it.
Awesome. So I hate to cut things off now, but there's so much to talk about. Maybe we should do this again. Maybe we should kind of do
Oh,
this more of a periodic kind of conversation. I'm going to talk to some of my students, friends, and followers and see if I can get some of the other common questions we can ask next time. But is
absolutely.
there anything you want to add for the recap?
No, I mean, I think your recap was perfect. I would say the only other bit is obviously if you'd like to learn anything else about what we do at Tax Goddess, you can see our website down below. It was so nice to add it to the thing. And Tax Goddess, you can find us. Our specialty is saving people tax money. So if that's something that you're looking for, you can always reach out to either Avi or David. I'm so sorry. I've known you for too long,
Yes.
David Goodman.
You know all my different nicknames. All my aliases, any name that any
Aliases.
government knows me by, you know me by.
Mm. Thank goodness I'm on the light side and not with the dark
Yeah.
side. Good stuff. But yeah, if anybody needs any help, we would love to chat with you, love to help you. We offer services all the way from setting up a small business in the first place, doing it properly, helping you get entities and EINs, all the way up to like, hey, I'm starting to make some really good money and I'm a little concerned about this tax bill. What do I do about it? So would love to help anybody from the Iron Rhino Forge group and the life. So
Well, thank you. And if anybody needs help with the blacksmithing project for their home or for their business, or is interested in learning traditional blacksmithing, my website is on the banner at the bottom also, ironrhinoforge.com. All right.
well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Shauna. Great seeing you again.
You too. Bye.
Bye.